Reviewing new cars can be a little bit like dating, and sometimes you just click because the chemistry is right. Well, I now find myself very much in love with the Alfa Romeo Giulia. Good afternoon and welcome to Four Wheels and a Seat. My name is Alex Dalrymple. This is my channel where I review new cars every week in a very easy to understand, simple, straightforward manner. If you don't want to miss a review, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below, the notification bell, and if you enjoy the video, give me a like as well. At the top of the video, you might have noticed me standing outside in front of this car, and there were a few drops of rain starting to fall. Well, that quickly turned into a deluge, and so I'll be doing the rest of this review driving around. But before I head off on the road, I just wanted to give a quick plug to my mate Tim Ross and his new book, Chuck a Yui, which is a fantastic collection of images of Australians and their cars over the last several decades, with some amusing commentary from Tim on these great photos. And I especially love the one on the cover. That's a Chrysler Valiant from the mid-60s, and my grandmother had one of those, although hers was a bit more of a vomit green colour, but it had a very distinct engine note, which will always stick with me. So yeah, Chuck a Yui, fantastic book. Check it out at Tim's website, modernistabooks.com. I'll put a link in the description below. So the Giulia has been around in this current shape for the better part of a decade and hasn't really had a lot done to it, bar a minor facelift a couple of years ago. But even though it is maybe getting a little bit old, it still looks really good and has performance to match. So from the front, there's no mistaking this for anything other than an Alfa Romeo. Part of that facelift that I mentioned included some brand new headlight clusters, which now feature full adaptive LED matrix headlights that also include sequential turn indicators. I really like the design of these. I think they look great. We've got the classic Alfa grille at the front. The nose comes down to quite a low point, and I do really like the off-center number plate. Now, something tells me that the Mazda 3 designers in Hiroshima might have had a look at the Giulia before they put pen to paper on the current version of the Mazda 3 sedan, because to my eye, these two cars look kind of a little bit similar. But if you're going to be inspired by a design, as long as it's one as beautiful as this, I'd say go for it. This mid-spec Veloce model comes with 19-inch wheels as standard. I think they look fantastic, and I think I should point out that the Etna red colour this car is in is a $3,000 option. White is the only free colour. The rear of the Giulia is nice, if maybe just a little more pedestrian. The boot has a 480-litre storage capacity, which is surprisingly big. It's a little bit on the shallow side though, and it's not a very big opening, so it could make getting larger items in a little bit tricky. Down low, we've got a couple of exhausts there that look good, but unfortunately they don't do much in the way of making noise. They're just really for show, at least in this model. Under the bonnet is a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo petrol engine that outputs 206 kilowatts of power and 400 newton meters of torque. It sends power to the rear wheels only via an 8-speed automatic transmission, and fuel economy clocks in on a combined cycle at 6.1 litres per 100 kilometres. The interior of this car is maybe a spot where a bit more of a refresh might be nice. And that's not to say that it's old and tired, it's just a little bit behind the times. We do have a really nice mix of materials though, with leather up on top with some stitching, soft touch plastics throughout. It does feel like a really nice premium cabin. The one thing that I think really does need an update though is the center console screen software. The screen itself is just under 9 inches and is reasonably sharp, but the software on it is slow and laggy and a bit tricky to use. There's no wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Now, I know there will be people who will be screaming at the screen right now saying, oh, well, you're not there to play with screens, you're there to drive the car. But I mean, the fact of the matter is these systems have become so integrated into the operation of modern cars that they really do need to be good, and this system is just a bit old. There is, however, a 14-speaker Harman Kardon sound system, and that is actually quite epic. Climate control's pretty straightforward, although it did take me a little bit of button mashing to work out how to change the direction of the airflow. I had to keep pushing the same button a number of times to make it work, just to get air to blow on me. Underneath that, USB-A port, 12-volt outlet, little storage cubby, Couple of cup holders, the lower console, pretty much a standard Fiat Chrysler gear shifter here. We've got the DNA drive mode selector here for the drive modes of dynamic, normal, and advanced efficiency. The jog wheel down here controls the center console screen. If wireless phone charging is here just next to the center console bin, it's actually really quite a convenient place to put it. Under the armrest, a pretty small storage cubby, but there are more USBs in there, USB-A, USB-C, and an external audio input too. The digital instrument cluster though has had a refresh. I think that was done on the last facelift, and it looks really good. It's a really nice design. A couple of distinctive display modes, including one that mimics an old 1960s analog Alfa Romeo instrument cluster, and that's just a nice classy little touch. It's a shame that the center console screen software doesn't have the same look and design as the instrument cluster, because it's really good. I like this steering wheel. It feels nice and sporty, especially with a flat bottom and the engine start-stop here on the bottom left-hand side. Two giant paddle shifters made of aluminium behind it. These are so big you can actually use them when you've got your hands in pretty much almost any position on the wheel. The seats are leather, they're heated, they have full electric adjustment, including bolster and lumbar support. The seating position, nice and low, sporty in the cabin. Not a huge amount of clearance there for my head, but it's enough. I'm not touching the roof, so that's okay. And visibility out the front, pretty good, right to the front corners of the bonnet. Pretty good through the rear vision mirror. Wing mirrors look good. Yeah, this is a really nice sporty place to be driving. Driving around town, and the suspension is not soft, but it's not overly firm. In fact, it feels as you'd expect a sporty European sedan should. The top spec Quadrifoglio model with all-wheel drive includes adaptive suspension. This one unfortunately misses out. Is the Alfa Romeo Giulia a turn-back car? A car so good looking you have to turn back and look at it after you've parked it? Hell yeah. As I mentioned before, there are three driving modes: dynamic, natural, and advanced efficiency. And that translates to normal, sport, and eco for pretty much anybody else. And they perform as you'd expect. Although this being a sporty sedan, the dynamic mode actually really does make quite a bit of a difference. You can feel the car become a lot more lively and a lot more engaged. But I think cornering is definitely one of this car's strongest features. It is just so much fun to throw around twisty corners. The noise from the engine, yeah, it sounds maybe just a little bit louder than most other 2-litre 4-cylinder turbos, but it's not quite the same sort of growl that you would hear out of a 6-cylinder engine. There are a couple of interesting quirks about this car though. When I first got into it, I found it to be quite uncomfortable, and I was like, how the hell am I going to drive this for a week? It just doesn't feel right. And you know what? I can't actually put my finger exactly on what it is that's not right. It's just a weird driving position, but you do get used to it. The other thing is that the pedals are very close to each other, the accelerator and the brake, and it is very easy to have your foot on both at the same time. But this is just such an engaging car to drive, and it's just interesting to see how it feels different to a BMW or an Audi. It's just not quite the same level of refinement, but it's not unrefined. It's just engaging. When I brought the Giulia home, my wife asked me how much it cost, and at that time I hadn't actually looked up the price, but I guessed about $80,000 or so, and I wasn't actually all that far off the mark. It's $87,000, including the $3,000 premium for the red paint and all the on-road costs. And that's actually pretty affordable. I mean, I don't want to say it's cheap, but it is more affordable than other European sporty sedans. So yeah, the Giulia is a little bit old and could do with a bit of a refresh, but it is still really good. So if you're in the market for a practical, sporty sedan that's not going to break the bank, definitely take one of these for a test drive.